Here we go. Okay, so see how this works.
Okay.
It just literally just follows you now.
Okay.
So there we go. So anytime you want to start.
Great. Okay. Well, welcome to the Judaica Suite. We love giving tours of our suite to visitors. No, that doesn't matter. Shall I do it again? The ums and the ahs.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. We love giving tours of the Judaica Suite to visitors. This space is part of the original library. It was built in 1925. And what you're seeing now is a room that was added in the 1930s. We had various collections in here over time. We had our Latin American collection and our children's historical literature collection. They all outgrew the space, and over time it became office space, a place for the curators to process their archives and manuscripts. And it was kind of a messy space. So we decided to renovate the area and dedicate it to our Judaica library, the rare books and the scarce materials in our Judaica library. And so the Dean of the Libraries commissioned Florida architect and artist Kenneth Triester to redesign this space. This was done in 2014, and he came in here and he had the woodwork painted dark. He brought in his own furniture that he designed for his home, which is a Honduras mahogany. And then he designed bespoke tables and chairs for each study alcove. And he designed the light fixtures and the lattice work on the windows to block out the strong lighting, but to filter it so that it comes through. He chose the quotations on the walls in each alcove to reflect the subject matter that's in the area. And he chose to put 2 chairs with every table to symbolize the Jewish tradition of studying with a partner, known as chavruta. Each little alcove, as we call them, is dedicated to a particular subject within Jewish history and culture. So the one that we're looking at now is dedicated to Jewish law, rabbinics, that's Talmud, and Jewish commentary over the centuries. Then the one that's over here, the next one along, has books concerning Judaism and Jewish liturgy and prayer and synagogue and practice. And in the third alcove on this side, we have books about the Hebrew Bible, the study of the Bible, commentaries on the Bible in various languages. And then along the back wall, that's dedicated to our Passover Haggadah collection. We have around 800 titles. They're not all here, but most of them are. Many of them quite unusual. It's an unusual collection. So we have things like Maxwell House Coffee Haggadah, and many of the commercial Haggadot produced in the 20th century. And we have a Haggadah from Bombay in the 19th century. That's in Marathi script. We have the last Haggadah produced in the Soviet Union. We have the only copy of a Haggadah from Buenos Aires dedicated to the labor unions. Many beautifully illustrated Haggadot. And pamphlets created just to commemorate a particular issue or community concern. Here we see a model of the Holocaust memorial that's down on Miami Beach, the 50-foot hand designed and sculpted by Kenneth Treaster. This is the first model that he worked on, and this in fact is a model of his hand, and it shows how he first conceived the idea. When we move over to this corner, we find materials relating to the subject of the Holocaust and anti-Semitism. We have a variety of materials here, including, unfortunately, a small collection of anti-Semitic literature, which we've decided that it's important to collect for the record. And then this year we acquired an amazing collection of letters pertaining to anti-Semitism. It was a survey put together by an Argentinian Holocaust survivor. He sent out his survey to about 5,000 world leaders, writers, intellectuals, politicians, scientists, and he received 1,000 responses from them, from the likes of Margaret Thatcher, John Glenn, many well-known names from the 1970s, and many Nobel Prize winners, all sent him their letters in response to his questions about anti-Semitism, and some of them are fairly short, and some of them are quite lengthy, and they included articles. They sent him photographs, all signed and some handwritten. Oops. The sculpture that you see here was created by the sculptor of the Heisman Trophy and the Library of Congress Falling Books sculpture. His name is Frank Iliscu. This one was commissioned by Frank Iliscu by a Jacksonville resident called Henry Landworth. Henry survived the Holocaust, and he came to America with very little money. He set up a hotel industry and built hotels for the astronauts in the building up NASA in the 1960s and 70s. He became very good friends with all of them. And then, having made his fortune through the hotel industry, he decided to build a charitable foundation, and he built a very important charity called Give Kids the World, which sends terminally ill children to Disney World. He's been given many honors and awards for his charity work, and we were very, very delighted to get this beautiful sculpture, this tree of life, from him this year. This alcove is dedicated to the subject of Land of Israel, the historical land of Israel, biblical land of Israel, and also through the centuries prior to the establishment of the State of Israel. We have here books, and over here we have a collection of old slides depicting Palestine in the early 20th century. We have a little book that was given to us by as a gift from a local gentleman, now deceased, David Crown, and it's a book given to British soldiers during World War One. A book of the Holy Land. It's got colourful pictures in it, and it has pressed flowers of the Holy Land too. If we come over to this alcove, these are all books and materials relating to largely the idea of Jewish diaspora. So many works about German Jews, Jews in Eastern Europe, and elsewhere in the world too. Some of the ones on display, like this one, this rare children's almanac from Germany in the 1920s, which contains children's poems and pictures and stories. We have here a rare book all about the Jews of Chicago, the history of the Jews of Chicago. It's a rather hefty tome. I believe there were only several hundred of these issued, and each one was issued to the Society's subscriber. So everyone is a unique edition. I don't think I can find the... Oops, that one. Ours was dedicated to Mark Levy, and it's a whole work on the history of the Jews in Chicago and all the names, the individuals, photographs, buildings, many statistics and wonderful facts. Those are the sort of books that you'll find in this room. Over here, Kenneth Treaster designed an ark for our Torah scroll. It was so that we could display it respectfully. The Torah scroll itself was written in the 1930s in Russia by a Hasidic group. It somehow made its way over to Chicago, where it was then purchased by Ray Price, who is the grandmother of our Price family, mother of, Sam and Jack Price, who named our library. And it was given to us when she purchased it for her synagogue, and it was given to us when the synagogue closed in 2011. And we now use it for teaching classes. We show students what a scroll looks like and how it's produced. And of course, it's just a beautiful object for our room as well. You can see the ritual objects that are associated with a Torah scroll that has to be adorned in a certain way. These are the crowns, the silver crowns that sit on top of the scroll's wooden handles. And down here we have the silver pointer that's known by the Hebrew word yad, which means hand, because you're not allowed to actually touch the scroll with your fingers. You have to use the pointer to read. In here, we call it our rare books room. A lot of the material that we've just seen is very rare, but mostly of late 19th, early 20th century material. In here is much older books and a few manuscripts. These are what are traditionally regarded as rare. So, for example, the book that you're seeing on the table here is from the 16th century. It was published in Venice in 1545. And it's the book of sermons written by a Jewish rabbi living in Spain at the end of the 15th century. His name was Isaac ben Moses Arama, and he was expelled from Spain during the expulsion in 1492. His work was then published in Italy in the 16th century. But at the same time, it was also something that had to be offered up to the Inquisition so that it could be checked that there was nothing offensive in the book, otherwise it would be censored. So here you see the marks of censorship in this book. But it hasn't been too badly censored. compared to other books, and compared to the same copy that's held in the University of Pennsylvania, where on this exact page it's completely blocked out, and signed by a Catholic priest. Now that censor didn't know what he was reading, so he knew that there was something offensive on the page and he blocked it all out. Our censor was more careful and obviously had an awareness of what was written there. Our copy is completely unique because it has pages of manuscript in it. And we know it's from the same period because the paper has the same watermark as the rest of the pages. So what might have happened is that pages were torn out and whoever owned the book inserted manuscript pages in their place. This year we did a special restoration project on it because when it first arrived to the library, we don't know what state it arrived in, but it was bound in this commercial binding, modern commercial binding. Sorry.
No problem.
You said it was relaxed, right?
It's very, this one looks very, this image is awesome. Is it the best?
And I've got a cold.
Oh.
I've had a cold. It's on its way out, but... Okay.
Okay. That's really bad.
So our conservator did the research to find out how the book would have originally been bound in the 16th century. And he sent to Europe for this beechwood. And he rebound it in leather, half bound in leather. And he found some authentic clasps. So that is a beautifully restored book that now looks like it would have done in its original state. And it has its own very nice presentation box. So, the number of rare books in our traditional rare books room is rather small, but we have a lot of great stories surrounding our books. So if you come here, you'll be able to learn some of the stories. So for example, we have another 16th century book. We don't know much about its history, but it obviously was in a fire at some point, but thankfully got rescued. And this is a Latin Hebrew work on the Jewish calendar, produced by the famous 16th century Hebrew Hebraist Sebastian Munster, and illustrated by the famous illustrator Hans Holbein. So it's really a beautiful copy. What else can I show you? Just have a think. Sorry, I wasn't thinking through what I could show. One of my favourite things is up in conservation.
Oh.
And that's a little book that we have, prayer book that we have with a cross on the binding, and it's a book in hiding. It's a Hebrew prayer book, a Jewish prayer book in Spanish, pretending to be a Christian prayer book so that they can hide from the Inquisition. So that's one of them. But the books that behind you, they aren't in great shape. The labels are coming off. The binding is a little bit, what's the word? Not tatty. I'm trying to think of the word. Well, you can see there's some chipping on the binding. Authentic. But all of the books have an important story. So they were, many of these are rare works of belonging to a rabbinical working library. They're works of commentary, some of them dating back to the 17th century. And they were all owned by a gentleman living in Germany in the early to mid 20th century. And he was expelled from Germany during the rise of the Nazis, and managed to make his way to Colombia, where he served as a rabbi, and he escaped with all of these books with him. So these are part of his journey. They are they have a deep history in Germany, these books, and then leaving Germany through Latin America, eventually coming to Jacksonville, and now residing in our library. So they must stay like that, because that's part. He rebound them and he labeled them, and that's part of their story. Right. Whether we want to look at some of the other things that we skipped over. This is one of the books from the rabbi's collection in the Rare Books room. It's an 18th century work on a rabbinical commentary called Binyan Ariel, and in itself is a very rare book. But what makes it even more interesting is the journey that it's been on. I said that collection was a collection that had many journeys, and we can see it in the fly leaves of the book. We've got somebody who's writing his name over and over and over: David Abraham Rosenberger, Abraham David Rosenberger, Abraham David Rosenberger, all over the fly leaves. Of course, that got me curious as to why he was doing that. And I did some research, and I found his name on a name adoption list in Germany. And this was at the point at which the Jews of Germany were first emancipated and were allowed for the first time to join German institutions. But in order to do so, they had to give up their former method of naming themselves. So it was always done as a patronymic. So you would be the son of. So he was Abraham ben David, Abraham son of David, and it went from generation to generation like that. But with German emancipation, they had to adopt German names. So this Abraham David Rosenberger, in the middle of his life, had to become Rosenberger, and this was something probably new and strange to him. So I imagine that this is the story of somebody who's just adopted a new name and is practicing his name all over his book. Over here we don't have in this collection very old manuscripts. That's not something that we represent here in Florida. We're really, our main boast is being a wonderful 19th and 20th century collection. But we do have books that relate to an older period. And so we have purchased facsimile copies of important manuscripts for scholars of the students. And so for this one is a 14th century copy of a Passover Haggadah from Barcelona, Spain. And it's very, very beautiful, you can see. Beautifully illustrated. And in itself, it's a rare book because it was produced by a company in London called Facsimile Editions, and they pay very, very careful attention to the original. They use the same inks. They acquire the paper from a mill in Italy that produces it to the weight of the parchment, so that when you feel it, it feels like you're handling a parchment manuscript. And they would reproduce everything in the original manuscript, like where there are the lines that the scribe used to be able to write his text, where it's faded, where it's stained. You see there's staining on the original manuscript, so they stained the facsimile. Even down to, so the original manuscript is held in the British Library. It even contains the British Library stamp. So for a student wanting to study the original, this is very, very close indeed. And what they do is they produce several hundred of these, and then they destroy the printing plates so they can never be reproduced. So each of these beautiful facsimiles is a rare book in itself. This is a scroll of Esther from Palestine in 1940, and it was produced by the new School of Art, the Bezalel School of Art, and it's a beautiful olive wood, And if you look closely, I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's inscribed with images of Jerusalem all around the wood. We have a few scrolls of Esther. And this one is another facsimile. This is a facsimile of a 17th century scroll of Esther from Germany. And I really love this one because whoever produced this depicted the biblical Esther in Hanoverian dress. So it looks very Germanic. It's very beautiful. Over here is our Judaica cabinet. We've been so fortunate. Visitors to the room have given us beautiful gifts, which have included Judaic objects, which we love to display, but we've also used in classes. We have an Introduction to Judaism class here at the University of Florida, and we use these objects to show students the various rites within Judaism. Those are glass shofars produced by an artist down in Miami. The shofar is the ram's horn that's blown to bring in the new year, the Jewish New Year. We have an antique etrog holder, but we've never seen one of those before. And it's nice, but we're not able to say a lot about its history. We have these Kiddush cups. They're from Russia, 19th century, and they were given to us as a gift by our dean's sister-in-law, Beersheva Russell. And they're very beautiful. They depict scenes of Russian villages around them. And they're used for making the sanctification of the wine on Shabbat, on the Sabbath. Sabbath candles and another Kiddush cup. These came from the Beth Shalom Synagogue in Jacksonville. They were given at the same time as the Torah scroll as a gift by Eunice Sisser and Florence Schemmer. They're two sisters of the Jack and Sam who named our library. And down here we have another Frank Liscu sculpture, a gift from Henry Landworth and family. This is a depiction of the Exodus. I didn't mention the big... The focal point of the room is this large artwork. It's a technique that's known as black on black, and so it allows an image to come out at you very subtly. It was also a functional design. It was an art work designed by an architect. When he was wearing his architecture hat and he walked in here and he thought about how to renovate this room, one of the things that disturbed Mr. Triesta greatly was the fact that the focal point of the room was the exit door. So obviously we need exit doors for health and safety, but he wanted to be able to provide another focal point. So that does so very subtly. It blocks the exit door view, not the exit door, but doesn't detract from the rest of the room. We'll go upstairs. The stairs are hidden around the corner here. When we're upstairs, we can better see the artwork that Mr. Triesta designed around the walls of the room. And these are abstract designs. Starting over on that side, there are 7 panels, and they depict creation, the days of creation. So they start day 1, God created the heaven and the earth, and then they go round. 7 days of creation. And they finish in our seminar room with the seventh day, the Sabbath, and a depiction of the Garden of Eden. We'll see that shortly. In the corners of the room, there are silkscreen paintings to replicate the original wallpaper that was in this room. And then hand painted on those four-corner panels are the words from the central Hebrew prayer that affirms one God. And it's called the Shema prayer. Around the room, Ken's placed various sculptures. He's used the same medium to express different ideas, so they're all bronze. So for this one, for instance, it's a big bursting ball. It's bursting out, and the idea is slavery to freedom. The sculpture here has many pins tightly woven together, and there he's expressing the idea of 6 million souls to heaven. This one sits right in the center of our collection of Judaica books. A Judaica book is a memorial book, and it was produced by survivors of the Holocaust when they first relocated to starting in Argentina. Groups of survivors would come together and collate all the materials that they still had in their possession, photographs of families, photographs of life in former villages and towns and cities, maps. They recreated maps. They made lists of those that had perished. They wrote biographies and histories of their towns, and they were all mostly in these very large format books in Yiddish and in Hebrew. And these are just full of historical information about pre-war life, but also commemorating those that were lost in the Holocaust. Because they were such large format books, not many of them were printed, and so they're actually very rare today. We have one of the larger collections in the United States. It's believed that there are about 1,200 titles published, and we have around 800. So we're one of the larger collections of these. This area is dedicated to the subject of the Americas. And here in the center, Ken placed a sculpture representing the idea of the Exodus, the Jews building the pyramids. So you have a pyramid, but using the symbol of the egg, which symbolizes both mourning and joy in Judaism. Among these books, we have so many wonderful and unusual titles that other libraries haven't bothered to retain. Haven't bothered to retain. We'll take that out. That other libraries have chosen not to retain. A lot of things relating to labor unions, commemorations of societies and groups. So, for example, the Jewish Poultry Farmers Association of South Jersey, their 10th anniversary, which is great. There's actually a lot of information in here that will be which will be important to researchers. But I think I could have said that better, but never mind. Anyway. Continuing on here, we have Jewish organizations and education, and as we move around, we come into what's a very popular area for our visitors is our chess sets and chess tables. In fact, we're open every Monday from 9 till 3 for general readers and visitors. And we have, this semester, we've regularly had 2 undergraduate boys who come here and have relax and unwind with a game of chess on a Monday afternoon. So that's really wonderful. But we've also hosted the chess club here and had a tournament in this room. And this is all inspired by Kenneth Triester's own great interest in chess. When he's traveled around the world, he's collected pieces, rare chess pieces, and he donated them to us so that we could display them in this room. Is it not coming out? Oh, right.
Here we go.
So we have chess sets from St. Petersburg, and from various countries in South America. I've tried to tie the chess sets into Jewish history as well. So I, a few years ago, found a lovely rare book from Paris, 19th century book, which is a copy of a medieval Hebrew poem that, as far as we know, was one of the first written accounts of the rules of chess. So that gives us a nice tie-in. Over here we have some more chess sets on another table. Here we have chess sets in jade from China, and a wooden chess set, medieval chess set from France. They're among the rarest of the sets. This alcove, that you'll have seen, that the alcoves, some of them are dedicated by our library supporters, and this one is the Hebrew language alcove, which was dedicated in memory of the Reverend Benjamin Safer, the first rabbi of Jacksonville. And we have some of his books on display too. It's Benjamin Safer's encyclopedia. And over here is his prayer book, which is distinctive because it was printed by a woman, a Jewish woman printer in 19th century Poland. When we come around the corner, we come into the Hebrew literature area. One of the interesting books that we have on display at the moment is this one called Bereshit, which means in the beginning. And it's beautifully illustrated by a famous Jewish artist called Joseph Tchaikov. But it's the book itself is rare and precious because it was the last Hebrew book allowed to be printed in the Soviet Union before Hebrew was banned. So that's from the 1920s. And it's got lots of printing errors in it because they were rushing to get it done before the ban came in, and they had to send it to Germany to get it printed at the last moment. Very, very interesting copy. Here you can see our beautiful tall chairs designed by Kenneth Triester. And I think that here Ken really shows his What's the word? What's the word? Ken shows his acknowledgement, not acknowledgement, his, no.
Sensitivity?
No.
Okay.
And here you can, and so here you can really see the influence of one of Ken's great influences, mentors, Frank Lloyd Wright. Kenneth Treaster regards himself as a spiritual descendant of Frank Lloyd Wright and very much copied his practices of start. Yay! I think with these tall chairs we can really see the influence of Frank Lloyd Wright, someone that Ken regards as a real... No. I just want to use the word influence over and over again.
You know how it is with those actors, right? Like those bloopers, right?
Okay.
They are tall.
So these are our beautiful tall chairs, which Ken designed as, I think, a nod to Frank Lloyd Wright, who has greatly influenced his career. And you can really see Frank Lloyd Wright's influence as well in the design of the table down the side there. In fact, Ken Treaster was involved in bringing Frank Lloyd Wright to the University of Florida because he was going to be building a fraternity house here, which sadly never got built. But this alcove here, and then going around the other side represents Yiddish language and literature. It was recently named by the DeBow Family Foundation for their family. I'll think of something to say in a minute, sorry.
Don't worry about it.
Our Yiddish collection is really wonderful. We have a lot of the basic classics of literature, Yiddish literature, but also some really rare pieces too. A lot of this came from a bookstore on New York's Lower East Side, which was for sale very soon after this library was first built in the 1970s. The first librarian, Robert Singerman, heard about the bookstore and went there and was very glad to be able to get it for a good price. And so we have, I would say, around 10,000 Yiddish books, newspapers and periodicals. This is another one of Ken's bronze sculptures. This time the idea is spreading out, and so it represents, it symbolizes diaspora. Displayed in the cabinets behind are sculptures that Kenneth Treaster made of famous Jewish philosophers, thinkers, writers. They were made originally to serve as a gift to donors to the Miami Federation. And each one is a set of 50, and Kenneth Treaster gave us the entire set for displaying here. This is a beautiful book with Art Nouveau illustrations, poetry and stories that were originally written in Yiddish and then translated into German. And our copy is signed by the author. going to go up into our seminar room, which is another part of our suite, and I haven't turned the lights off. Should I turn the lights off and come back down and say we're going to go into our seminar room? And now we're going to have a look at our seminar room. We use this room for meetings, for small group seminars. The students can come up here. As I said, when we're open on Mondays, we sometimes get graduate groups coming here to study. Ken finished his creation series here with the 2 panels, one representing the Sabbath, the other the Garden of Eden. Over on this wall we have a photographic image of Ken's sculpture in Miami, the Holocaust Memorial. This one's just a close-up detail of the memorial. And we have empty shelves. Well, we have room to grow, but we're actually hoping soon this year, this summer, to get a rare Yiddish library from the community of Uruguay. We were hoping that some of those books will come here and find a new home here. The Judaica Suite gets used for many purposes. We have here classes that, not just for Jewish studies, but also for anything that relates to our library's special collection. So English literature classes, anthropological classes, history, many varied subjects take place in this room. And we have lectures in here in the evenings. We have meetings in here. We had Cicerone's training event in the room. Part of President Fox's inauguration ceremony took place in this room. He had his robing ceremony in here. We have UF online courses filmed in here. It's a much loved space. Students really seem to appreciate the quiet space too. We have, in our libraries, we have some wonderful spaces for students, places where they can go and collaborate and be noisy and generate new ideas and new projects. Then they can go in other places and have a drink and a relax and a study and a chat. Here's some serious study space, but it's nice. It's a nice, quiet thinking space. We get visitors here daily. We offer tours of the room, and we have larger tours, people who come in groups from outside of Gainesville, and we do individual tours as well. What else haven't I said? There's a wealth of history here to come and discover. And so even if you're not using the material or a researcher, you can come and have a step back in time and a walk through history.
Did you think of like a wrap up?
Yeah, wrap up. That's what I was trying to
we
do
don't
with
have
my
to do it
walk
this
through
time.
history.
This is kind of like a practice
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Because I want you to look at this and this.
Yeah,
and
go.
look at it and then
Yeah,
get
and then
ideas for the
right,
next time.
right, and maybe actually next time I might pull out. I might think of other things I could pull out to show. Might be more. Oh, I've got to go along and see that kind of thing.
We have to remember to wear the same thing next time, just in case.
Okay, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
In case we want to
Okay.
piece this
Okay, sounds good.
together.
And the hair in the ponytail.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you'll see.
Okay, a wrap-up statement.
You don't have to do it.
Please come and visit us. We really look forward to you coming to visit us here. And we we really look forward to you coming to visit us here. Just contact me either by email rjefferson@ufl.edu, or you can call 352-273-2865. And we'll set up an appointment.
It's just like Yellowstone. You can't stop filming because it's
Right.
we got some good stuff here. It's going to look fabulous.
Right.
I promise you that.
I didn't know how much of, each, where.
Stop it now.
So